On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, Keith and I break down the 5-game road trip. 5 games starting with the Jazz on Saturday night. How many games are you going to be satisfied with on this road trip? We'll talk about it, give our thoughts next, right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Keith, Pompey, Devon Givens here with you on Locked On 76ers. Keith of theinquirer.com. I'm from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia. What's happening, Keith?
What's good, D? How you doing, bro?
Good, man. 5-game road trip is what's happening for the basketball team. So we need to tap into this one and talk about what they have to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of stuff that they got to do, man. I'm enjoying, looking forward to the convo.
All right, 5 games on the road. We'll begin with that. We'll also talk about the 5 starters. Game 8 was played on Thursday night in their loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. In 41 games, only 8 games played. So how many games is good enough to evaluate them as a group before we decide whether it's good or bad? We'll get into that. And also, as always, on a game day or previewing a game, we'll give our thoughts on what they need to do, key matchups we'll be watching for. Thank you again for making Locked On 76ers here on Locked On 76ers on the Locked On Network. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. All right, Keith, we'll start there with the 5-game road trip. Let's begin with that. Utah on Saturday. Utah, good team at home, man. They win at home, and they are tough out overall with their wins that they had. They got off to a really hot start, and then they kind of tailed off back to the team that we thought they would be. But they probably boast an all-star in Lowry Markkanen. The last time we saw them in Philadelphia, Joel Embiid dropped 59 points on them, leading his team to victory, 26 points in the fourth quarter of the 27 the team scored in total in that final frame. So as we get ready for this road trip, man, when you look at this realistically, what is a number that you, as an analyst and, of course, a guy who covers this team, when you look at them, what's a number on this 5-game road trip that you feel, all right, I'm satisfied with this number of wins on this trip?
I mean, it's tough. Like, you would say the at the bare minimum, you want to see them go 3-2, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, I think the easiest 2 that they can get are the first 2. And then after that, it's going to get a little bit competitive. So if they can steal one of those, it's good. But, that's what I'm saying. That's the bare minimum. But I would say, like, if they want 4-1, then you say to yourself, like, yo, this team might be pretty good, But the one thing is that it's going to be a lot of things that you want to pay attention to. And it may sound crazy, but it's real. Like, I want to really see what James Harden does. He was an all-star in the West. He played there. He's going to go up against a lot other elite guys. I want to see how he plays. I want to see if he's going to continue to distribute the rock and do things like that, or if he's going to be, let me take people off the dribble and try to win it myself. So I think the way that he plays, will go a long way with them, and then probably help us determine on how this team is going to play down the road. But I'm thinking 3-2, man. They got to go down there and like at least win the series, like get a
yeah. They're 1 game under 500 on the road at 8-9. And with these 5 coming up, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. 1 game at minimum over 500 on this trip is good. If you get 4-1, 4 of the 5, that's a successful trip. And I don't know what it would spell later on, but for this particular trip, anytime you go out west and you can take a majority of those games in the 800% percentage there of winning those games, then you're in a pretty good spot. So I would say 3-2 at minimum. 4-1 would be fantastic. 5-0, superb trip. Anything under 3-2 will be a disappointment along the trip. Number one, too, Keith, is because you have all you guys healthy. And also, number two is because you are trying to really establish who you are as a team with your 5 starters. We'll get to that in the next segment, but you have winnable games. To your point, all of them are honestly winnable, but the easiest to what you pointed out a little bit earlier was Utah, LA, albeit back to back. Those are the teams that you feel like you should beat these teams, even on their floor. But the Jazz are tough at home. Lakers are playing better. And this is going to be a pretty good trip, I think, to find out who they are, especially when you talk about the bonding on the trip and all that stuff. These guys have been home a lot. They're going to be on the road for 9 days. This is to what you said about the James Harden part also, how you kind of figure out who a team and who a group are. And maybe it'll even help the front office and the coaching staff in deciding if they want to do anything particular around the trade deadline in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it could. I mean, you're going to get to play people and you get to see weaknesses, strengths, weaknesses, things like that. I think it will benefit everybody,
especially in tough environments on the road. See how they respond, because that's what you're going to see in the playoffs. So good one there, Keith. And I agree with you. 3-2 at minimum. 4-1 would be fantastic. We know what 5-0 would say to us if they take all 5 games along this road trip before they return home to take on the Brooklyn Nets. I believe that's on a Tuesday when they come back, Keith. They have a couple of days off before they take on Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, and the Nets here back in Philadelphia. When we come back on the other side, the 5 starters, they've only played 8 games. What's a number for you that you feel comfortable saying, all right, I need to see this many games of these 5 to really determine how good they are with PJ Tucker in that starting lineup? We'll tap into that next right here on Locked On 76ers. I got to tell you about LinkedIn as a small business owner or hiring manager. You know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post company and their 875 million member profiles to put your posts in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So get involved. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to Locked On 76ers. Keith Pompey. I'm Devon Givens, and we talk about the 76ers, 9 games over 500, getting ready to embark on a 5-game road trip. After Thursday's loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder, that was just the 8th time of the season that the projected 5 starters were on the floor together. That is Embiid, Harris, Tucker, Maxey, and Harden in the starting 5. They're now 3-5 in those games. And Keith, as you look at it, what's a fair number to judge them as a 5-man group after having so little time on the floor together?
That's a tough question to answer because, I guess you could say around 20. And I know people might say that's kind of crazy, whatever. But see, here's the thing. The reason why it's a tough question is because I'm just going to talk about the Boston Celtics a year ago. Through 41 games, everyone said they don't fit. It's not going to work out. These guys aren't going to play well. But then all of a sudden, they went 31-10 in the second half of the season, and ended up going to the finals. So it's kind of like it's one of those things where you know where the Sixers are behind, but you also know that based off of the game that we saw on on uh on Thursday, is one of those things where you look at it and you say to yourself, like, they got holes that they need to fill. Like, they got to work on some things defensively. So I feel like if you abort it real early, then it's like, what's the point? You understand what I'm saying? Like, now here's the thing. And also another thing is, like, we're talking about how many games. It's kind of like, to me, it's going to take a while because Tobias, we got to see how Tobias fits in as the fourth option when he's been for most of the season the second guy because of injuries. We got to see how DeAnthony Melton comes off the bench because he's not going to be in the starting line. So we got to see how James and Maxey do play. So at minimum, I would say 20 games at minimum. I'm talking about 20 games from now, starting now.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't think it's a quick thing. You look at it 5 games and say, "Oh, this isn't working."
Yeah, I was and this came to my attention for us to discuss it because one of the listeners on Twitter, he reached out, Coach Skip, and he said, I think it's a fair thing, as I was talking about it on the radio, but he said it was a fair thing he felt to give them 20 games as
Wow.
a
See,
group
yeah,
to see exactly how they come together, how they gel, what's their cohesion like, what's the chemistry like while they're on the floor together. And we just haven't seen enough of it. So it's frustrating when a guy like CJ McCollum goes off for his 11 threes. The same thing with Zach LaVine on Thursday. Shea Gilgeous goes for 37, and it was too easy for him as an offensive player. But to your point, you're right, man. I mean, 20 games is fair. I mean, even if some want to say give them like 25, whatever it might be. But where we are right now at this stage of the season, knowing that that's probably going to be your 5 in the playoffs to begin games, to start that series off in game number 1, 20 to 25, I think, is a fair number overall to really gauge and evaluate. All right, these guys have this. PJ Tucker, we're starting to see this with him now that he's out there for an extended time with Embiid and Harris and Maxey and Harden, none of them banged up. They're all out there together. So I say 20 to 25 is a fair number. I agree with you both, you and Coach Skip on Twitter.
yeah. Is that my man, Coach Skip? I know Coach Skip. What's up, Skip?
Coach Skip B-Ball
Yeah,
on Twitter.
yeah.
Yeah,
I remember him from back in the day when I was covering preps. He was
yeah,
cool. He
yeah.
is a cool. I ain't gonna say was. He's still a cool dude.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good dude. So I thought that was an interesting response to the conversation had on the radio with those 20. When we come back, though, Keith, we do have a game on Saturday. The Utah Jazz played on Friday night, taking on the Orlando Magic. But, let's focus on what they could do against the Sixers. Some key matchups that you would want to see because it looks like it's a little bit of a different team here, man, than what we saw a few weeks ago back here on that Sunday night in Philadelphia where Embiid dropped that career high 59. So we'll tap into that next, get into some of the keys of the game, the matchups for this upcoming start of the 5-game trip right here, Locked On 76ers.
Let's talk about Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to NBA and World Cup. We've got it all at Bet Online, or we had it all since all that stuff is over. But if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at Bet Online as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your bet.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Good stuff there. Welcome back to Locked On 76ers. Keith Pompey, Devon Givens with you here, and we got to talk about the Jazz and the Sixers. So let's really get into this one with this team, man. Again, last time we saw them, Keith, they were a team that was really surging, man, and the surprise of the league, arguably, at that point in the season. Since then, they've kind of come back down to earth. There's a couple of games under 500 now, and while they do win at home, they have a tough time on the road, and they're going to try to have a little payback for the Sixers. This is all, and that's always a tough environment. You've been there, I haven't been there, but I've always heard the stories of how it's very tough to play in Utah because they are simply on top of you with how the crowd is, how tough it can be, and how they give the fans a difficult time. This is this was going to be a tough one tonight. So how do you view this game against the Utah Jazz?
I still think. I mean, I think the big thing for the Sixers is going to be the altitude, right? You know what I mean? With a couple guys just coming back, and let's see if they're in like Maxey is he's in shape. You know what I mean? He is in the tip top shape, but running up at that altitude. I mean, I think that is set up. I mean, in the past, this would be one of the games the Sixers would lose, just because it's like you assume everything is in their favor and then they mess it up, right? You would assume that. But right now, I think that they'll win. I mean, I do. I think that they'll get this thing. And I think it's going to be, I mean, it'll be within like 9 points or something. Like, I mean, around 9 points. I think the Sixers will get it because Utah, even though they're playing the Orlando Magic, it's still a back-to-back. You know what I mean? So I think the Sixers will get them.
Yeah, so you say the altitude is similar to Denver, like that?
Yeah. Running up
Okay.
here, yeah.
Okay. Well, interesting. Yeah, I do think that they do go out there and get this W, get back to 10 games over 500, start this thing off right, because they do have a back-to-back with the Lakers. And you want to take care of business first, which is in front of you, and then figure out how you want to attack that one on Sunday. And I would hope that they'll play because they have that Monday off leading into the game Tuesday against the Clippers. But the matchups, Lowry Markkinen, how do you guard him? Do you PJ Tucker? Is it Tobias Harris that starts off there? And then Jordan Clarkson. We just saw a guard go off in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who can get to the basket and finish with the best of them and give you problems. And when Doc Rivers talked about their defense being poor with the straight line drives and not being able to help because of how fast those guys were getting past their man and to the basket, James Harden and Tyrese Maxey are not known, Keith, for their defense. And Jordan Clarkson is a dynamic guard who can score and fill it up with the best of them. So that's a matchup. Whoever is defending him, that is one that's going to be interesting. And how fast will they pull one of them or PJ Tucker and then mismatch things around, like the cross matching where DeAnthony Melton or Matisse Thybulle, they're the one chasing around DeAnthony Melton, trying to slow off his driving lanes and closing out on those jumpers that he likes to take, those step backs or those transition with his full speed, stop on a dime and take that jumper. I'm very, very interested to see how they guard and defend both Lowry Markkinen, Jordan Clarkson, and how they match up with the bench. So those are mine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with those. And also I want to look at the coaching matchup because this is a nice young coach. And, Doc is a veteran. I just want to see how this thing works out. I mean, the way that one guy will make one move and the other one make a counter move. I want to see all that.
And the one thing, too, before we step away, Keith, is they will be playing on the second night of a back-to-back. Although they don't have to travel, they're home for both games, Orlando on Friday, Sixers on Saturday. It is the second night of a back-to-back. So let's see what their legs are like for this upcoming game. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next, check out Locked On Now podcast for nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Keith, can you let the folks know where they can find us, your writing, and me during the week?
Yeah. I mean, you can find us. You can find my man D on the Divine Giving Show on 97.5 FM radio. You could also follow. It's 6 to 10 on Monday.
On Monday, looks like 8 to midnight on Monday.
Or 8 to midnight on Monday, but it's typically 6 to 10. And you can also follow him on Twitter at DivineG975. You can follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers. And you can follow me and Inquirer.com.
Absolutely. Hope you all do that. Keep in touch with Keith while he's out on the road with the team. We thank you again for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. On Monday, we'll recap the weekend and look ahead to the next game against the Los Angeles Clippers. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Keith, have a great trip out there. Of course, I'll be talking to you every day along the trip, but it should be a fun one against this Utah Jazz team on Saturday, man.